Mr. Anderson, and thank you, Chair.
All right, we're going to go to Senator Buck.
Thank you, Chair Dennis. So I have been an educator for 30 years. I remember positive behavior supports, love and logic, which looks like restorative justice, where you're teaching kids about consequences inside the school. However, when it reaches a threshold where it threatens staff and students, I think that we need to leave this in the hands of professionals. So I just wondered how does this work in conjunction with the bullying law, or is it conflicting?
Superintendent Anderson for the record, Chair Dennis and Senator Buck. Thank you for the question. I think that there oftentimes can be overlap with bullying. Not all bullying, as you know, it results in physical aggression or you know, the big three per se. But I think where there is a lot of overlap is many of the same strategies that you would use to teach students about the societal impact of their words. The bullying laws and pieces that we have in place do have their own requirements in regards to you know, levels of consequences, so there is overlap, but I wouldn't say it's as much as you might think for some of the aggressive things, because my experience has been most bullying actually isn't physical, it's other types.
For the record, Paul Lamarca, may I add just briefly that Mr. Anderson talked a moment ago about professional judgment of the administrators making these decisions. There are certain restorative practices that you probably would not recommend be used with bullying victims. You don't want to re-victimize a victim. And so some of the kind of more common practices, such as restorative conferencing, those have to be done very carefully given the situation. So that's to the point of providing some latitude for school administrators to make these critical decisions to support kids.
If I may follow up, Chair.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Dennis. So I guess where I have a problem is where we're looking at the restorative justice classroom, or where do these kids go if they are bullying, if they batter a staff member, if they're under 11, where do they go back to class? Where does this happen?
For the record, Paul Lamarca, Chief Strategist Officer, Washoe County School District. It really depends. So if we're talking about where do they go? So the legislation is pretty clear at this point that every attempt should be made to keep them where they're at and support them where they're at. And plans should be created in order to do that. And then if the school team determines that the plan can't be carried out because of safety concerns, then there's some temporary location to create some separation so that appropriate strategies could be implemented to repair the harm that's been caused. So I hate to say it, but it's really a case-by-case situation. As the impact, the physical and emotional impact heightens, then there is probably a greater need to remove than otherwise.
I agree.
Okay, thank you. Assemblywoman Miller.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair Dennis, and thank you for this presentation. My question actually is for, because as we're having this discussion and I'm hearing the concerns of both of my legislative colleagues, one being about checks and balances, one being about, you know, of course, some of the, obviously the main goal of keeping everyone in the building safe. And of course, our educators that are presenting. So my question goes back to, and I am not great at remembering bill numbers, but I'm great at remembering bill content. So I know that LCB will help me with this if we need to reference this specific number. But I think what can bridge some of these concerns, because I appreciate what you said about, you know, and the question that was brought forward, truthfully, not all fights are the same, right? Not all bullying is the same, not all instances, not every instant is the same. Even when we have students bring weapons to school, it's often with different intent. And so that ability to use some judgment of what the circumstance really is, but again, balance it with checks and balances, because a lot of this came out of the inequities that were being prescribed to specifically Black and Brown students. And so making sure that, how do we balance, just like in the criminal justice world for adults, how do we balance public safety, but make sure that it's done consistently based on the incidents. And so it was, I believe it was 2019 that again, a committee bill that we put forward for NDE for the schools to report to NDE. There was supposed to be an evaluation of the actual incidents that occurred in schools and what those consequences were. And the intent of the bill, it actually, everything from was to actually have some consistency in description of the bill. So for instance, let's just take a tardy. We know that, you know, if a student's marked tardy, that could be different. That tardy could be defined differently from teacher to teacher in the same hallway, let alone in different grade levels, different buildings, different districts. So first, let's get our handle on, can we all agree on in the state what a tardy is, and then therefore what those consequences should be for that tardy. And so again, creating being able to give our schools the ability to make to have that professional judgment, but as well to give some confidence to the communities and families as well, that we are also, that these things are being consistently delivered. So if either NDE or LCB has an update on that.
New things.
Christy McGill for the Director of the Office of Safe and Respectful Learning. I think you are referring to SB 89 that was passed 2 sessions ago. And that was to really look at exactly what you said, to really try to codify disciplinary. So there was a working group that went through and helped codify those disciplinary for the districts. It was a long time coming. You know, looking at just the things you said, so that we would be comparing apples to apples. It's an ongoing process. We are closer now than we were before, comparing apples to apples. But as new things come into the disciplinary realm, such as restorative practices, that work still needs to continue, and that agreement on that, you know, being able to look at that across the different districts is important, and it continues to, the work group is continuing. There we go.
Thank you. Follow-up, Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, Dr. Miguel, this is, I was going to follow up with you. Thank you. Is there a way we can get some information on the working group, the members, the dates, some of those reports, the information that's actually been produced from that group? Because I think it's important, especially now moving forward with, including that within this whole discussion.
Absolutely. And just clarification, it is not Dr. McGill. It's just plain old Miss McGill or Christy.
Okay, I'll go with Ms., maybe not plain old Miss, because I don't think, but yes, Ms. McGill. Thank you. So are we able to get that information?
Absolutely. This is Christy McGill for the record.
Okay, thank you so much.
All right, other questions? I'm waiting to see if Ms. McGill gets up so that I can call her back.
Right.
Just kidding. Other questions? I am not seeing or hearing any. So I think that's it. I think we've covered this item. I want to thank everyone on this presentation. And we are going to now go a little bit out of order. We're going to go to item number 12, Roman number 12. Which is the presentation on school and school district performance plans. The department will have Gabrielle Lamar, Office of Student and School Supports presenting. And then we also have Dr. Summer Stevens from Churchill County School District, and also she's the superintendent, and then she's also NAS president, the NASS president, and then we'll have some questions. So I think we'll turn it over to Gabrielle. Yes, you have to push the button and it turns on, and then make sure you always identify yourself. Thank you.
Awesome. Hello, everyone. Good morning. Gabrielle Lamar for the record. And I believe, so sorry, I believe there's a presentation. I don't know if, do I cue that? Okay. My apologies.
So we'll have staff help you there. Yeah.
Okay, I think we're good to go. Thank you so much for your patience. And once again, Gabrielle Lamar for the record, Interim Director of the Office of Student and School Supports within the Nevada Department of Education. And today I'm going to be providing an update on the school performance plan and district performance plan as part of our redesigned continuous improvement process. So NDE about, I would say, a little over a year ago, partnered with a UPD consulting or partner of Washington, D.C. They were selected through a competitive process that did comprise of both district and state leaders to help facilitate wide level redesign. And the focus that we have always been saying is focusing at getting better at getting better. And so you'll see here that the SIP, what we call it for short, continuous improvement process, or the SIP, is a process that was informed by continuous improvement theory and research along national and local improvement best standards. So it has been anchored, we have anchored our learning in data. We are consistently focusing on equity, TSI plan per federal law, as well as our TSI schools. Our TSI schools are targeted support and improvement schools, and these are schools with large and reach those goals and to ultimately improve student outcomes. The first year for utilizing this new redesigned school project, again, was jointly, or the redesign, I should say, was jointly designed by NDE and school district leaders with input from stakeholders across the state. And so we did have different focus groups and different meetings and opportunities for community members, including school leaders, to provide input on what this new process should look like. And these were some of the common themes. And so we realized that the community and again, school district leaders, school leaders, so we, that was one piece of feedback. Another piece of feedback that we received was that the final tools and guidance needed to reflect national who would be directly using these tools want to feel confident around using these tools, and to ensure that there was a laid foundation for using aligned and consistent languages and forms and processes. Another piece that I spoke about just briefly was that these, again, were to be living documents that are used for authentic improvement efforts and not just done for compliance purposes, but are truly strategic and meaningful. And lastly, another common theme that we heard from stakeholders was to ensure that there were strong working relationships when using these tools built on trust, transparency, and mutual goals. So again, these were some really key pieces of us really working through this process. And I also wanted to share that there have been throughout this process 3 main teams that we've had, comprised of, again, both district and state leaders. And so we have had a design team, and that design team has been able to put pen to paper, so to speak, and actually create these updated tools. And our strategy team, which helps guide and direct the work and provides feedback to the design team. And then we also had what we called a design collaborative. That was a larger group of stakeholders that were to review and prototype and provide feedback on the process. And so that was, again, comprised of SCAM and LE leaders, and they are continuously engaging in feedback process from their school leaders, and then bringing that feedback back to those 3 teams that I mentioned, so that we are ensuring this was a framework that has been decided on, again, collaboratively with state and LEA leaders But I do just also want to point out before I kind of dive deeper into this framework that although this is the framework that has been used, districts do certainly have autonomy and flexibility to then adjust this in alignment to their current context. And so this, the processes that are in place to meet and to go through each one of these acts may look a little different per district depending on their context. But you will see here, so Act 1 is what we call setting the course. And this is where the school is going to organize their continuous improvement or CI team. And they are going to go through the current landscape. So this is where their needs assessment, their cause analysis takes place. And then this act culminates in the development of the school's school performance plan for the year. The next act is navigating the course. And so this is where progress monitoring will occur. And the school CI team will monitor the SPP roadmap and goals, share progress updates with the school community and its stakeholders, celebrate what is working and make adjustments to what is not working. And then the last act would be reviewing the journey. So this would be where after a year of implementing the plan, where the CI team would be evaluating the goals and strategies in the SPP roadmap, identifying key learnings from the journey to then again determine what should be continued and to also identify areas of improvement. Events, and you will see there. So Act 1 includes events 1 through 5, Act 2 events 6 through 8, and Act 3 events or event 9, they're reviewing the journey. I will say that the strategy team and the design team are currently in the process of, based off of stakeholder feedback, of and districts help them out with this redesigned process and supports throughout the process. So we have had statewide trainings, resources, guidance and tools, and also have been providing technical assistance as needed and differentiated and targeted depending on the school district's needs. This right here is what you are seeing is a Padlet, and this is where all of the tools and resources live. So there are specific tools in this palette, and we have received great feedback that this is a great resource and very helpful resource for districts and schools to then refer back to as needed. PP is tentatively scheduled to be completed at the end of this month. And so again, that is tentative because as new information and context, as we continuously improve, we do want to make sure that we are again taking into account school leader and stakeholder feedback, but tentatively right now, SPP. And that wraps up the SPP progress and update. And I do have a few slides on the district performance plan, so the DPP. And so I can go through that and then take questions or take questions now. Okay, I'm seeing Senator.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and just
Okay.
finish?
Thank you. We hope, like the SPP for the DPP, is to streamline some state and federal requirements such that each district is not having to on the school level. DPP serve as the school district's roadmap that then is going to address the needs of their schools and outline their goals and specific action steps that the school district would take to improve student outcome. And this, like the SPP, is reviewed and updated regularly. The redesigned DPP process will also be in collaboration with the school and district leaders as well. And we will also continue the design team and the strategy team and the design collaborative to ensure that we are getting that feedback to make these tools as useful and as streamlined as we can. Oh, sorry, the last thing before I move on to the next slide is to also just talk briefly about the difference between the DPP and a strategic plan. And so we know that districts also have their strategic plans, and those are usually 5-year goals, if you will. And so the DPP is really to be a more specific and detailed plan that will then help each district to get to the goals and then outlined in their strategic plan. So I'm not sure. Seems to be a little technical difficulty here on this slide. But these are the currently proposed design elements of the redesigned district performance plan, or DPP, and what has been shared and discussed with both the design team and the strategy team. And so I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to read each one since it seems to be cut off. I'm not sure what happened there, so apologies for that. But one element is the flow. And so having an annual calendar for order of operation should be very clear to all. That is one design element. The second design element is that it's direct. So the most effective models direct districts and in turn schools to focus on a few common priorities. The second one is cohere. So what teachers do at the classroom level directly connects to plans for school, district, and state improvement. So ensuring that there's that alignment. A focus, the fourth one is focus. So focus on measured change and student, teacher, and school level outcomes. The fifth one is study. Allow schools and districts to study the quality and effectiveness of implementation. So back to that progress monitoring that we discussed a little earlier at the district level. And then adapt. And this is one that our strategy team and design teams were added, because initially it was just kind of 5. design elements, but that last one, being able to adapt and allow for local adaptation and flexibility per each LEA, per each district context, is also a very important design element that our strategy teams and design teams also did mention. So here's a visual of the DPP process overlaid with the school level process. As you can see, the school level process is in the middle. And this visual is just showing that the district planning process is basically the umbrella over then the school planning process. As a district planning process, it should be taking into account, again, the needs of the schools. So this is just a visual that is showing that continuous improvement process. And the next steps for the development of the redesigned DPP, the design team and the strategy team will continue to meet regularly to build out the DPP components and process. As I stated a little earlier, initially the idea had been to finalize the SPP while simultaneously building out the redesigned district performance plan. But per design team feedback, they really felt like they should focus on rolling out and finalizing the SPP for the next school year. And then the team will take on the or focus on the DPP redesign. The tentative timeline for the completed DPP beta, right? So the beta is going to be basically like the first version. So the timeline for that development is by the end of the summer. The tentative timeline, again, could change depending on stakeholder feedback and just moving the process along and capacity. But there will be a redesigned DPP that will be piloted and then refined, as there was for the SPP before there is a state rollout. So it would have to be rolled out for all districts, but there will be a pilot with districts so that we can get some stakeholder feedback, and then it will be refined before there will be a state rollout. As part of the continuous improvement process, we know that similar to the SPP, that we will also be, even though it will be rolled out statewide, there will also be that feedback, that continuous feedback loop to ensure, again, that these are useful, valuable tools that our districts are using for authentic district improvement. And now I'm happy to take any questions.
Do we have any questions? Yeah, Senator Buck.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Chair Dennis. So I was wondering, as far as implementation, we get the results back from SBAC. I'm assuming that we're using interim assessments as well as SBAC assessments. And so what does the timeline look like in full implementation of this?
Thank you so much for the question. Gabby Lamar for the record. So yes, so the redesigned SPP, like I said earlier, we really wanted it to be a living, breathing document. So regardless of when it is submitted to the Nevada Department of Education right now, the due date for that is November. But we are in discussions with our school districts who are then receiving feedback from their schools about adjusting that timeline. But regardless of when it is submitted to us, we know that this is just a snapshot in time for the school, because the school is constantly using interim assessment maps, right? So it's not just focused on SBAC data. That is something that we heard from our districts. We're hearing them from their schools very clearly. So schools do have the flexibility to use what interim data they think is best and a best indicator of their students' progress, and then they should be updating then the SPP continuously.
If I may, Chair.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Dennis. So one other question, just as it relates to compliance. And so I found that in doing these things for years is that just making them as simple as possible so that they're not compliance related, got to have 6 people on the team. It's more about, getting to the root issues and submitting quality work. What are the plans to maybe share best practices? So say that there is a school that, did a stellar plan, but it actually equates to results. What are the plans to share that?
Awesome. Thank you so much for the question, Gabby Lamar, for the record. So the team is currently in communications on that. And so we know that sharing exemplars is something that we did hear from our district leaders that were hearing that from their schools, because this is a new process. And so we will be sharing some exemplars. Now that everybody has been through the process for this current school year, we wanted CI teams, again, our continuous improvement teams, to really feel like they were owning the process and didn't feel like they needed to be, if you will, kind of kept in a box, if you will. And so now that we've kind of gone through this iteration, we will be sharing some examples about what an exemplar could look like, but also making it clear that we do want our CI teams to, make this their own. The real let me see, what do I know? The real fun, right? And like the real improvement is in following the process, but that could look different for every school. So I hope that helps answer the question. So we haven't yet shared, but the plan is to definitely share.
Thank you.
All right, other questions? Anyone up north or in Zoom? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Then we'll go to Summer Stevens' presentation.
Thank you so much, Senator Dennis. Summer Stevens, President of NAS and Superintendent of Churchill County School District, and also serve on some of those committees that Gabby was just speaking about. Also, I think maybe still in the room, CJ Anderson may be there. He has also been participating in some of this work. So I don't have a lot to add specifically, but I did just want to follow up on some of what was shared and say thank you to the Department of Education for the work on the process. I would add that I think what's exciting about the new process is that it's working to align and try to minimize the silos. That's the note I wrote down amongst the work that we do in an effort to move us towards this competency-based, personalized learning conversation that we're having and trying to tie some things together. The 2 points that I would like to make in relationship to the work, our district was part of the initial pilot. We had 3 schools that participated in that work, along with other school districts and schools within those districts, and we're able to provide a lot of feedback. We also are now all in this beta work and providing the feedback. So that has been really great. And the department and UPD have been really responsive in trying to, as Senator Buck, as you talked about, right? Like it's not a compliance task. It's really about improving. And so trying to really honor what we're bringing forward as the hurdles or the hoops and getting rid of those pieces that best we can. So one of the things I would share on behalf of superintendents is a conversation we have, but it's also on behalf of school improvement specialists, on behalf of principals, folks who work in grants, the staff in buildings, whatever their role is. One of the things that is a challenge to us related to school improvement, related to assessment, is the misalignment between the budgeting cycle in Nevada, the assessment cycle in Nevada, and this reporting cycle. Now, as Gabby pointed out, right, this is continuous, so that's fantastic. So what we need, so right now when we report though, it's due in November. Part of the work is when we all finally come back together, that's when we get a lot of the data, or we're just getting the data now, for example, with our map results, and then everybody's leaving. So the time spent to really analyze what's happened over the course of the year oftentimes doesn't happen for some districts because they don't have funding to bring people in over the summer, or as we just learned, people have literally, they need time to kind of regroup themselves and care for themselves and be able to come back in the fall. So we don't do that until the fall, where we can really dig in, which is well after the time we should be deciding what supports and resources we need to put in place for this. If all of that's lined up in a way that makes sense, or how we get into the space to have ways to adjust and adapt. Because right now, also with the way that grants work, which grants are great to support resources for our needs related to the things that we come across as we do this work in improvement. But sometimes we can't spend our funds until we can revise a grant, until it gets approved at the various levels. So sometimes that creates a bit of a roadblock. So just that alignment piece or misalignment. And then also the question was asked about sharing best practice. So this work tied also with the work that's happening, and it's going to come up in a future agenda that you have around the competency-based personalized learning conversations and how that's progressing from the Blue Ribbon Commission moving forward. Those communities of practice or those networking opportunities that we can create in our state are going to be really key also, in addition to those exemplars of actual documents, if you will, are going to be so important for all of our school districts. And I just would like to share, we love the support that we can get from the legislature, anything that can help us run those networks or those community of practice that help staff, help teachers, help principals, help district staff engage with one another, creating opportunities to do that in whatever ways are possible, to fund those, to get people together in whatever ways are possible, to talk with one another, share with one another, not just seeing the paper version, but really engage in dialogue. So we would support anything that you also can support moving forward for school districts. But I know CJ is also possibly still in the room. And so if he is, I would ask if he has anything else from the NAS perspective to share at this time.
CJ Anderson, for the record. Thank you, Summer and Chair Dennis. So just two quick things I'd like to add. Number one is I can't speak highly enough about the organization of the rollout of this effort that we've done. I was one of the, as a principal, I was one of the piloting schools in Elko County last school year. Then I had the opportunity to manage it from a district level as the director of school improvement. And now I'm still kind of doing that as superintendent. So what I've noticed is prior to a mass, here's how we're doing it, there was a ton of thought put into it. There was a lot of conversation was evident, and the resources that were provided in support, that rollout was exceptional. And I think it's part of the reason why we're, I anyway, am very supportive of it. I think a lot of people were able to latch on to it. We've seen good preliminary kind of, I don't want to say results yet, but good kind of feedback from administrators and schools in our communities in Elko County. So I would just encourage any effort that we're trying to put forth at a state level. Really, this type of thoughtful rollout is wonderful, and it's much appreciated by NDE and their consulting partners. The other comment I'd like to make is in regards to, I believe it was Senator Buck's question about by using exemplars and finding schools that are having success with so many other things to have immediate success in these types of efforts, especially in the new beta rollout, that sort of thing. Just to, understand that these things do take time, and any meaningful change will take time as we adjust to how to incorporate that. And I also look forward to seeing how other schools are having success, but success, as we know, and whether it's an organizational success or an individual success, success looks different for different people depending on their circumstances and what their goals are. So there's a lot to be considered when thinking about what an exemplar might look like. But anyway, thank you again.
Okay, any questions for any of these folks? Okay, not hearing any. Thank you very much for that presentation. We're now going to go to the next one. So it's my intent to go to this next one. After this, we're going to take lunch. Yep. And so we're going to switch now to item number, Roman numeral number 11, discussion on educational staff recruitment and retention programs and initiatives, including updates on staffing shortages.
My apologies, Chair Dennis. Our staff is not here yet from the Commission on Professional Standards. They were prepared to present after lunch.
Oh, okay. Okay. So hold on.
We can do the boards, councils, and commissions presentation if you would like that at this time.
Okay. So hold on 1 second. I'm going to pause so I can take a look at the agenda. Okay, so here's what we need to do, because we're going to lose one of the presenters on that next one. And so we're going to have Summer Stevens do her part of that presentation. And then we can take a break for lunch. And then we can then continue that item when we come back for lunch. So let's have Ms. Stevens, if you would, Dr. Stevens, if you would go and do your part, and we'll ask any questions that we have. Thanks.
Okay, sounds good. Superintendent Stevens, Summer Stevens, Churchill County School District and current Nevada Association of School Superintendents president. Mine is really, really short, but important. I just wanted to really support. You're going to see a lot of great documents after lunch. And we wanted to convey that we will probably second, third, fourth, fifth behind everything that is said. We recently met with representatives from higher education about teacher pipeline, staffing pipeline, other support staff pipeline. You already heard this morning about from Christy McGill about other providers, right? Our psychologists, social workers, mental health providers, and how do we get those folks up into the ranks. You're going to see great information from the Department of Ed's presentation, specifically with all of the opportunities that exist. We are one of the recipients in Churchill County. I believe also Elko is, of the teacher, the CTE teacher pipeline, grant that's coming up this school year and next to actually hire a teacher for teaching and training in the CTE programs. In my district alone, I actually am teaching that class this year so that we could get it started. We had 9 students, 100% retention, 2 are graduating, the rest are moving up, and 42 new students are coming in. But I just can't do 3 sections next year. That's where I'm headed off to, is to teach that class today. So we're really excited. We're getting them dual credit, college credit. That's what everybody's trying to do, so that we're getting them kicked off really in a great way so that we can get them out into the field with a great start, with enthusiasm and excitement for this profession that we do love and we do know is awesome for people to a great profession to get into. So we are just grateful that there are so many recruitment opportunities for the profession, the education profession. We do also want to continue to advocate. We know there is legislation, in NRS for our critical fill situations. And we want to continue to be able to fill our needs, not only with the professional licensures, but our licensures with bus drivers, with other areas. We are desperate to fill all of our staffing in our schools. And I think obviously you all work in all kinds of fields. Everybody needs employees. And we are in that same situation in schools. We need people to be able to be in our like school safety, school security, being able to be available to kids for help. We need to be able to cover our duty assistants, our secretarial pools, our office support pools, accounting, our maintenance pools, our custodial pools, all of those things. So we just want to, you heard a great public comment at the very beginning, right? We have to continue to look at those ways. Ed Week had a report last week, I believe it was, that was looking at salaries, for example. And you know, Nevada kind of falls, I would say, in the middle of actual average salary when you look at that what they posted. But when you look at over the last 2 years, Nevada was one of 3 states that's going backwards, though, in keeping up. One of 3 out of all of the states. And so we know we have some challenges that we're going to have to take a look at. And, you know, my district's one of those. We're preparing our budget for next year and looking at our ending fund balance. I'm going to be at 4.01% ending fund balance with what I'm presenting to my board next week. That's literally at the bare minimum of what I can have. I have those ESSER funds and that's great, but it's going to go away. And so that's going to be our challenge long-term. The inflation, all of those pieces, we've got to keep looking for solutions. Those folks who've served on all these committees, these different people who are going to present to you have fabulous ideas. We're out there recruiting, we're growing our own, instructional assistants, paraprofessionals, people in other jobs to become teachers. We're growing our teachers into leaders. We're growing our leaders into central office folks. We're going to keep doing that. We're getting our safe school professionals who were community health workers who can go on now to get their master's degree of social work. We're keep growing people because that's what we do here in Churchill County. Everyone always learning is our mission. I think that's everyone's mission in schools. But we really thank you for all of the support you can keep giving to our districts in any way possible. And we're grateful to the presentations that are going to come after lunch. If people have any questions to me specifically, or anything that you want me to take back to NAS, I certainly would entertain that at this time.
Thank you very much. Do we have anything, either that, as she just mentioned, either questions or anything that we would like for her to take back to the other superintendents and on this issue? We know this is a huge issue. And we've got to try, and I know we've started some things that are going to help, but that's only a start. We've got to do more, even more. Do we have anything? Anybody have any specific questions for her? Yep, Assemblywoman Miller.
Thank you, Chair Dennis. Since the request of anything that we would like you to take back to your superintendents, again, if we had ever had any efforts on retention, we wouldn't be in this predicament right now. As you know, we're doing all these backflips and thousands of things to try to get people in the door, lowering the standards, doing everything we can without acknowledgement of the real, again, the lack of money. And again, when we look at having some of the largest class sizes in the country, where that salary goes. And when we're looking at support staff, and we forget to include in the conversation that I know the general public assumes that support staff is probably working 8 hours a day, getting paid for 50 hours a week, but they are not. In some cases, they're getting paid for 3 hours a day for 180 to 185 days of that year. But the bottom line is, you know, we've heard educators, and that includes everyone in the school building, say it for decades now: working conditions and pay. So while superintendents don't have as much control, maybe, I believe they could, but as much control over pay and salaries, I think superintendents absolutely have control over so much of working conditions. So that's what I would ask for you to take back to your fellow superintendents. Again, making sure that our staff is supported, that they're treated respectfully, and that the countless things that are put on everyone's plate that don't actually align or support directly student achievement, whether that's academic or social achievement and development, that those things are removed so that we can get to the core of the real reason why educators are there in the building, for the social and academic growth. So if you could take that back in a nutshell, that would be great. Thank you so much, Superintendent.
Assemblywoman Miller, thank you for that. I certainly will do that. And, you know, I've been on here now 3 months in a row. You're probably tired of hearing from me, but, you know, I think we're on the same page in that regard, right? Like we have to stop adding all this stuff, and we got to get to the heart so that we can remove all of that from the plates for sure. So we're like-minded in that regard, and I certainly will take that back and make sure that it's very known that's what we all want to focus on.
And I'm gonna hold you to that, because I'm gonna tell everyone, Superintendent Stevens said she told you, so now we're looking for. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Stevens. Thank you. We appreciate you being able to come back each time, and we respect your opinion and those of your organization, as well as all the other stakeholders that we've been trying to involve in these discussions. So thank you very much. Any other questions? Not hearing any. So thank you very much for being with us today, Dr. Stevens. And we are going to then take our lunch, the lunch break for 30 minutes. We are at 12. Okay, so hold on. Okay, we're gonna, instead of 30 minutes, we're gonna do 40 minutes. So we will be back at, let's see, right now it's about 20 till, so 10 after, so 20 after, does that sound right? Yeah, 20 after 1, we will continue. So we will be on break until 1:20.
Okay. You just stop. Well, it doesn't matter if I stop the share, but what we have to understand is that they're talking about what's not happening in Clark County for African-American children, for Native American children, for Hispanic children. These are the children that are demonstrating the maintenance of effort. And why don't they have the data? Because data is everything. I can stop the share for right now because they're gone to lunch. And actually, we're still here. So what they were reviewing was the maintenance of effort for IDEA. And that's how come the county is in there also talking about willful defiance issues and what they're actually doing in the harbor. The harbor is illegal as it is an alternative placement for education. And no, staff members don't have absolute authority to make the final decision. There must be data, it must be measured, it must be monitored. And if it has to do with communication, well, guess what? Communication is part of special education. I don't know, my camera's not really great here in this little area, but hey, it's the quality of Apple. This is an Apple MacBook Pro, 15-inch, and I got it not even a year ago. I've got 4 years under the warranty, and look at the quality of bullshit that they expect you to pay for and not receive quality services. And quite frankly, I don't give a damn because this is money out of my pocket. And when I'm spending money, I expect a level of quality that is beneficial to me. And because I understand the use of technology, hello, America. This is Darlene Anderson, and I will be back this afternoon when they come back to talk about the measuring of the maintenance of effort for the use of federal dollars, because we're only talking about the reimbursement funds. And did you not hear them say that school sites were responsible to turn in their single plans for student achievement to who? The Department of Education. So those waivers that are not available anymore. And that's how come they had to go all the way back to 2017 with that damn data. Well, this is America. And I'll say, welcome to America in 2022. What are you willing to do? Hey, catch my podcast on Anchor, Parent Empowerment Hour, or you can catch me right here on YouTube, Darlene Anderson, 1958. But pimping ain't easy, but goddamn, when people have just maintained to harvest, and the people who are being harvested just not speaking up. But you have to figure out how I did it and participate, engage in the process, and wake up, America, in 2022. I'll be back, y'all. And whenever they said they're coming back after lunch.